Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Brian Sims, author of You Don't Have to Be a Champion to Be a Winner. Brian, welcome to the show.
Well, it's really delighted to be invited to talk with you this evening, Paul.
Brian, I'm looking forward to it. Are you ready to get started?
I am indeed.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I think it is to create a structure for the book. Now, I've written, most of my books have been non-fictional books, but even so, you need a structure. You've got to have a beginning, you've got to have a middle, and you've got an end. And what I found is that if you set out and build, let's call it a skeleton, and you know where you're going, it makes your life so much easier because you've got that plan alongside. And if the book starts to divert off to one particular point and you want to get back to where the objective of the book was, and you've got that plan beside you, you can see how to get back there. Don't just sit and write. Keep to a plan and have a clear objective as to how you're structuring the book.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Yeah, that's all of it. I think what you have to have is credibility. You must remember publishers get hundreds, literally, maybe thousands of phone calls from people, many of whom have written superb books, some maybe not so good. But it's getting that credibility that, number one, you're going to stick with it. The publisher said to me, "Have you ever written a book before?" And I said, "Well, I have, but a long time ago." And they said, "Did you finish it?" "Yes, I did." That in itself is great credibility. But also, the more you can provide the publisher with information about yourself that makes you either an expert in your field or somebody who they can say, yeah, this person's got the drive and determination. They're going to finish that book, not waste our time. So credibility, very important.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Well, I've been very lucky. My publishers have a tremendous marketing department, and the lady who runs it has helped me understand the power of social media. Now, as a relatively old man, that didn't come easy to me, believe me. But having seen the effects, I've got onto Facebook, I've got onto LinkedIn, onto Twitter. And what I found is, don't just put words on those pages. Make videos, get photographs, write articles, attach it to it. It makes it more interesting. Wordy social media blogs or whatever they are can be very boring. Add video. It works. I promise you.
Well, you bring up a really good point, too, talking about the engagement in social media, too, not just about the posts, but graphics, videos, different things like that. What type of videos were you posting?
Well, very short, nothing more than sort of 30, 40 seconds, but just very short, one message. Don't try complicating it. One message might say, do you want to know how I made it as a professional racing driver with very little skill? Then read my book. That's an example. You don't need to have lots and lots of words. Short, sharp videos, 30 seconds maybe with some photographs involved, a little bit of clips depending on your background. But make it exciting, make people want to get out there and I need to see that book.
Well, for our audience too, Brian has had quite the fascinating life. I think we were talking for about 20 minutes before we even hit the record button because of all the great things that you've done in the world of racing. And I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind sharing a couple of those stories. I know we talked about Niki Lauda and James Hunt, and some of your other journeys. So if you want to share a little bit about that now, we'd love to hear it.
Yes, indeed. I spent a lot of time on the IndyCar circuit working for a British race car manufacturer called Lola. And when I arrived at one particular race at Columbus, Mid-Ohio, I flew into the circuit, went over to the hospitality area to get myself a coffee, and I couldn't work the coffee machine. And a very quiet voice behind me said, "Hey, we haven't met. Can I help you with the coffee machine?" And I turned around, and it was none other than Paul Newman.
It's amazing how racing connects everyone, isn't it?
Well, that wasn't it. The following day, a guy called Rick Gallus, who ran one of the teams, came up to me and he said, "Brian, tomorrow morning, would you come to our motorhome? I want you to meet somebody who wants to possibly get into motor racing by owning a team with me." And I asked him who it was. And he said, "Well, you'll see when you get there. But he wants to talk to you because you're a marketing expert about motorsport. He wants to know all about the commercial side of the sport." And when I got the next morning, they opened the motorhome door, and sitting there with a baseball cap on, jeans, trainers, was Gene Hackman. And I had to pinch myself. I spent 2 hours sitting talking to Gene Hackman, not about films, about motor racing. Amazing.
Well, and I also remember you were talking too about Niki Lauda and some of the stories with him and also with James Hunt. I mean, it really has been a colorful life, to say the least, and a lot of amazing memories.
I've been very, very lucky. And, I had dinner with James Hunt about 3 months before he sadly died at the age of 43. And what a loss to motorsport that was. There were a lot of drivers. You're lucky in America. You've got some fantastic characters in racing. They're a bit bland, I find, some of them in Formula One. But you could never call James Hunt bland. That word never could be applied to that man. That was for sure. Wonderful, wonderful character.
Excellent. Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know, what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
My favorite book was by a man called Mark McCormick, who started the International Management Group of companies, the big sports marketing agency, IMG. And Mark McCormick wrote a book called What You Don't Learn at Harvard Business School. And it was a book all about how he started off with Arnold Palmer, the golfer, and how he started a sports marketing business and how he brought on sponsorship. And I found that book, it was my Bible for many, many years. And I think that still, it sits proudly on my shelves. And then, even more proud of all, it is personally signed by him, because I went to one of his lectures in South Africa when he came over, and he signed the book personally for me. So that is a very special book that I would never let go.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
That's easy. My favorite quote is, "There's one thing more contagious than enthusiasm, and that is a total lack of it." And I learned that from my tutor at Xerox when I was a salesman at the sales training school, and I've never forgotten that. And being enthusiastic will get you out of hot water in so many occasions, particularly if you're in the business world. We all make mistakes, but people will forgive you if you're enthusiastic and you've made it because you are enthusiastic. Dull people don't make success in life, I'm afraid, only maybe in terms of clerks and solicitors and so forth. But be enthusiastic and people will like you for it.
Brian, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
My website, Brian Sims, so that's BRIAN, S for sugar, I for India, M for mother, S for sugar, .co.uk.
Well, Brian, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Paul, it's been a great pleasure being here, and it was lovely talking to you and all your listeners. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.